Okay, so the purpose of this video is not to do the whole practice final exam. That's on another YouTube video. But it's just to run through really quickly and show the identification of what methods to use. So I'm gonna look at the words on the practice final here and show you how you can figure out what steps or method you're supposed to use. That's a lot of the battle on the actual final exam because it's a whole semester of material. We've done a lot of things. How are you going to recognize what to do when? So let's go through that. Number one, a newspaper posted this question. How often do you seek medical information online? Of the 1072 internet users who chose to respond, 38% responded frequently. What term is used to describe this type of survey in which people surveyed consist of those who decided to respond? And what is wrong? So which term is used? Those who decided to respond. Now this is not on our final exam notes. I'm going to be referring, let me go back here, to our final exam notes throughout this. And you should have these final exam notes. You can have as many notes as you want with you on the final exam. So you should have these final exam notes, and maybe other things too, with you during the final exam. They'll help. But anyway, this question is not really addressed by the final exam notes. Some of them are not. They're just more terms you might know. So the people decided to respond, right? This question, it was posted on its website. The question was posted on the website. So not everybody responded. A lot of people saw the post on the website and didn't bother to respond. Some did. So what's that called when that happens? B, the respondents are a self-selected sample or voluntary sample, same thing. And so what's wrong with that? A, many people may choose not to respond. Do you remember that? That was way back in chapter 1. We talked about that's not a good way to take a survey. Because what you get is when you see something online, you're not going to take the time to respond to it unless you're really into that issue. Many people will choose not to. All the regular people don't respond. Who responds then? Only extreme views respond, because you don't have to respond. The only people that are going to take time to respond are the people that have really strong feelings on the issue, either for or against or whatever. So you're not going to really get the true average opinion out there. You're only going to get the extreme views on the issue whenever you have a voluntary response situation. Instead, good surveys, when they try to do surveys like polling before an election, they don't just put it on an internet site and say who you're going to vote for. They actually send pollsters out to call people or meet people on the street and ask them who they're going to vote for, or any other kind of survey you'd like to do. Meet them in person or call them in person, because that way people won't, you'll tend to get a response. You won't have only the extreme people responding and most people ignoring. Most people won't ignore somebody that comes up to them face to face. They might, but you're going to get a lot less of that. And so that's why you don't want to do voluntary response samples, because most people choose not to respond. You don't want to post things on the internet. And anytime you read a study, coming out of this class, I want you to know, anytime you read a study that, was done on an internet or a radio talk show, call-in show, or something like that, and they say, yeah, 80% of our callers feel this way, or 80% of the people that clicked on this web link feel that way. Don't believe those results. That's not, I'm sure that's 80% of their callers or their clickers, but that's not 80% of the whole population, because most people saw it and ignored it and moved on. Only the extreme view people took the time to respond. That's why that's a bad way to survey. Okay, let's keep moving. Number 2, common system for computing grade point average. Say no more. Let's go back to our notes. Calculate GPA. There it is. Just follow these steps. So this is number 1 in the notes. Again, I'm not going through the steps right now. That's on the other practice final exam YouTube video. Now I'm just helping you with identification. So you'll recognize this on the final exam. If there's a GPA question, you'll go back to number 1 on the notes, which shows you the steps for GPA. How about, let's go to number 3 here. Okay, so use the following cell phone, airport, data speeds, blah, blah, blah. Find the percentile. The percentile of 11.7. Let's go back to our notes. Find the percentile. Go through these steps. Again, I do it on another YouTube video, but there it is. So it's notes. It's number 2. It's notes number 2. So notes number 2. All right, how about the next one? Find P40. Let's go back. Do you see that on the final? Find P40, etc. There's a bunch of steps. That's number 3. Pretty much going in order here. So that's notes. That's the final exam notes, number 3. Question number 5. 5-number summary. They want you to find the 5-number summary. Let's go back to the notes. Box plot or 5-number summary. There it is. Follow those steps. So that's notes number 4. Let's keep moving. Number 6. Down here it's saying, now this one says, it gives you some table. Here, let's move it over. Now, number 6, I'm going to actually do it because there's nothing in the notes about this. It's basically just making a table. Probability, well, it's got a table already. Probability of a false positive. Now, what's a false positive? Let's read through this table. Positive test result, drug use indicated. So these 40 people, the subject uses drugs. So these 40 people are drug users, and they tested positive on the drug test. So that's what you would expect for a drug user to test positive. These people, these 2 people right here, they're not drug users, but they tested positive also. That's a false positive. These 5 people here, they're negative. They tested negative, but they are drug users. See there in the top row, the subject uses drugs. So that's a false result. They tested negative, but they are drug users. These 28 tested negative and are not drug users. That's what you'd expect. People that are not drug users should test negative. Okay, so with all that in mind, making sure you understand the table, probability of a false positive. Well, who's the false positive? Positive, not a drug user. These 2 people. Those 2 people got a false positive, right? Because they tested positive, but they're not drug users. It's a false positive. It said they're drug users, but it's false. They're really not. Now it says probability. Remember, probability is always part out of total. That's how we always do probability. So what's the part? 2 out of. Now what's the total number of all these people? If you add them up, I don't know what that is. 42, is it 70? I think it's 75. So I just added 40 plus 2 plus 5 plus 28, 70, yeah, 75. So then there it is. Take your calculator and take 2 divided by 75. Get the decimal there. I'm getting 0.026666. They want me to round to 3 places. So this is the 3rd place. You circle the place you're going to stop in, the 3rd place, and you look 1 to the right. You know, if it's 6 or 5 or more, you go up, 0.027. So that's the probability of a false positive, 0.027. Who would suffer from a false positive result? Like, who would that be bad for? Well, that would be bad for the person tested, because he or she would be suspected of drug use when he or she's not using drugs, right? They got a positive. The test said they are, but it's false. They're really not. Okay, good. Let's move on to number 7. Now on number here, I'll get a fresh screen here. Number 7 says a bunch of information, 148 subjects, blah, 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 blah. Hint, construct a table. So this, again, is not on the final exam notes because there's not really an exact method. We're not going to use any kind of official calculator test. It's just make your own table. So I'll go through it right here. I'm going to make my own table. Now, how do you make the table? Well, you read about what they're talking about. It's just like the last one. You have positive test results, false positives, negatives. So we have a test. So you're going to have positive, negative, and then you have drug users and not drug users. Okay, and let's put the information on there. 148 people, subjects, positive test results. Okay, so among 148 subjects with positive test results, that's the number down here. That's the total number. 27 were false positive. That's right there. And 150. Does that make sense? Let me stop right there for a second. 148 total positive, right? Among 148 that had a positive test result. That's the total number of positive test results. 27 were false positive. Okay, and well then, how are we going to find? How am I going to find that number right there? You subtract, 148 minus minus 27. What's that? 121. So it must be 121 because now those add up, don't they, to be 148? 121 there. Now we keep on going. So now it says 100 among 158 negative. So that's over here. That's the total negative. 3 false negatives. So that's actually up here, isn't it? Because false negative would be somebody who is a drug user, but they got a negative test result. So it was a false result. That makes sense what a false result is? It's telling a lie. It's telling false information. If they're really a drug user, the test should not have come out negative. So these 3 people got false negative, right? It said negative, they're not a drug user, but that's false. They are a drug user. So among 158 who got a negative result, 3 were false negative. So then how do we find out the other number? Again, subtract 158 minus 3, 155, right? So 155, because those will add up now to be 158. Okay, so now what's their question? The probability that a randomly selected subject tested negative. So we're doing probability again. So that's always going to be the part over the total. Okay, so how many tested negative? How many is that? How many tested negative? 158 people tested negative. Or did not use marijuana. So 158 is already these 2 combined. So we don't need to look at them anymore. So there's 158 people that tested negative or did not use marijuana. That would be these other 27. Do you see how I came up with it? Maybe I should leave the 158 out. Maybe that's confusing. If you want, just look at these 4 groups and you'll circle them, them, and them. And that'll be your total, right? Because these people and these people both tested negative. They're saying give us all the people that tested negative or the people who don't use marijuana. Not drug user, those 27. So any order you want to add those 27 plus 3 plus 155 over the total. What's the total? I don't know. Got to add them up. 121 plus 27 plus 3 plus 155. What's that? 8, 9, 16, 10, I think. 306 over 306. So I know that's often hard to figure out. Do you see what I did there? When it says the subject tested negative, well, these people tested negative, right? They're drug users that tested negative. These people tested negative. They're non-drug users that tested negative. or did not use marijuana. Well, these people tested positive, but they did not use marijuana. That's why I included all three of those in my sample. If you add those up on the top, what's that there? 185 over 306. If you divide that in your calculator, 185 over 306, I'm getting, and 3 decimals, 0.605. It's 405, it rounds to 605 would be the answer. So that's kind of tricky, making your own table and carefully answering that question. It's not on the final exam notes because it doesn't use any particular method. But there it is, using the table and figuring everything out. Number 8, in the state's Pick 3 lottery game, you pay $1.46. If you select 3 digits, you're drawn, you collect. Oh, so stop, say no more. It's a lottery game. Let's go back to our notes. Gambling or insurance? There it is. Follow those steps. Gambling or insurance question. The steps, number 6. Notes number 6. These are the final exam notes. So final exam notes, number 6, it'll tell you the steps. Go to number 9. Assume that when adults use smartphones randomly selected, assume that when adults with smartphones are randomly selected, 41% use them in meetings or classes. If 5 adult smartphone users are randomly selected, find the probability that at least 3 of them use their smartphones in meetings or classes. Now, this is a really tricky question as far as it can be hard to tell what method you're supposed to use here. Let's go back to the notes and see if notice as we look at this that it never says anything. There's no mean. There's no standard deviation ever mentioned in these words, right? They talk about percentages, and they say things like at least 5. You can read that. I'm going to scribble in there. At least 5. They say percentage, or at least 3. At least 3. And they never say mean. They never say standard deviation. Let's go back to the notes. Here it is, number 7. Look at that. Probability exactly, less than, at least. We have at least, don't we? With no mean and no standard deviation. There's the steps for handling that. It's notes number 7. So this is notes number 7. Final exam, notes number 7. Number 10, assume that adults have IQ scores that are normally distributed with a mean. Now we're mentioning a mean and a standard deviation. Find the probability, blah, blah, blah. So there's, let's go back to the notes. Normally distributed mean and standard deviation given, that's us. So there we go. When they ask for a percentage and n equals 1, that's our case here. This is what is the problem we're looking at. They're asking us for a percentage and n equals 1. There's no mention of an n being more than 1 is what I mean. They don't even talk about n. So we're just talking about one person. Let's go back into the question and see what I mean. Right, so they say mean, standard deviation, probability that a randomly, that's n equals 1. A randomly selected adult. IQ greater than 130. Find the probability is always a percent, isn't it? So when they say find the probability, they're asking for probability or a percentage and n equals 1. So we go back to the notes. So they're asking for a percentage and n equals 1. So that's final exam. Notes number 8, first subsection. I feel like I'm a lawyer here. Notes number 8, first subsection. All right, let's go to number 11. All right, number 11. Survey found that women's heights are normally distributed. Mean standard deviation. Here we go again. Mean standard deviation, normal distribution. That's a bell-shaped curve. The survey found that men's heights, blah, 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 same kind of stuff. All right, what do they want? The percentage of men is what? So this is the same thing. This is, again, notes number 8. And there's no mention of an n greater than 1. So this is first subsection again. It's just like the last problem, right? Let's go back to it. See? Normally distributed, mean standard. They're asking for a percentage or a proportion or a probability. Same thing. A probability is always a percentage. And n is 1. They never mention n is more than 1. We'll get to the more than 1 in a minute. But they didn't say anything like that. So it's notes number 8, first subsection. Again. And now down here, on part B, they get a little more tricky. If the height requirements are changed to exclude only, now they're giving me a percentage. And they want numbers. See, up here they wanted a percentage. They asked for a percentage. That's why it was first subsection. But now down here, they're giving us a percentage. So that's notes number 8, third subsection. Let's go back and see it. See, right there, third subsection. They give you a percent. There's what you do, the inverse norm thing. They give you a percent, a 50% or whatever it was. Right? Yeah, 50%. Tallest, 50%. They're giving me a percent. Notes number 8. So again, I'm not going to solve it the rest of the way. That's on the other practice final YouTube. I'm just helping you identify right now. Number 12, overhead reach distances, blah, 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 blah. So mean, standard deviation, normally distributed, same kind of thing. We're still talking about final exam, notes number 8. But which subsection is this one? Well, this question, part A says an individual. So that's going to be first subsection. And then part B says, look at part B here. Part B says, for 15 randomly selected distances. So that's the second subsection with n equals 15. Up here it's n equals 1 because it was an individual. Here, I'll change the color. N equals 1. This was n equals 15, right? For 15. Up here it was probably that an individual. Now it says find the probability of a mean, find the probability that a mean, an average of 15 distances. So that's the second subsection. Let's go back and look at that. So here's the second. They ask for a percent and n is more than 1. You got to use normal CDF and do that whole thing. The main thing is you got to divide by the square root of that n number. That's the trick there. All right, so we good there? So A and B are different. Then C is just words. You can answer that. Let's move on. Survey of 3,495 adults. Blah, blah, blah. 85.4% of them use at least one prescription medication. All right, what are we talking about? How many of the 3,495 used at least one? Well, this is not on our final exam notes. This is just figured out by hand. So it says we have 3,495 subjects and 85.4% of them. So in other words, 85.4% of the 3,495 people use at least one prescription medication. So how do you find out how many actual people that is? It's 85.4% of the 3,495 people. But how many actual people is that? Well, that's just, you just make it a decimal, 0.854. And what is of always in math? Times. It's always times. Of is always times in math. So just take your calculator, 0.854. I'm doing it right now too. Times 3495. I'm getting 2984.73. Round to nearest integer. So 2985. So 2,985 people is what that actually is. So that's not on the notes. That's just multiply the decimal times the number, because that's of, right? Of them. Of means times. Next, construct a 90% confidence interval estimate of the percentage. They want a confidence interval for a percentage. Percentage is a P, and you can see P's there as well. Percentage is P. So a 90% confidence interval for P. Let's go to our notes. Confidence interval for P or percentage. There's the steps to take. Number 9 on the notes, the final exam notes. So this is final exam notes, number 9. Okay, number 14. Clinical trial was conducted. Effectiveness of a drug for testing insomnia in older subjects. For the treatment, 16 subjects had a mean wake time of 101. After treatment, 16 subjects had a mean wake time of 79.2, so it went down a little bit, so that's good. And a standard deviation 21.1. Assume that the 16 sample values appear to be from a normally distributed population, and construct a 90% confidence interval. 90% confidence interval. So they want a 90% confidence interval for means. Confidence interval for means. Let's go. So these are going to be all mixed up on the actual final. Let's go find confidence interval. But you can see those important words. Confidence interval for mean. Let's go back. Confidence interval for mean. There it is. There's the steps. Oh, and no data given. Yeah, that's us. We have no data given. There's not a list of data there, so it's actually all the way down to there. No data given. That's us. Confidence interval for mean, no data given. So that's final exam notes number 9B, and it's the no data. 9B for the mean, and there's no data given. Follow those steps. Oh, and then down below, it's going to ask you, what does the result suggest about the mean wake time? Does the drug appear to be effective? Does the drug appear to be effective? How do we figure that out? Well, yeah, I'm going to leave that. That's on the other video. I'll leave that. That's I'm not explaining everything here. Number 15. Summa significance level of 0.05. Use the given information to complete. Claim. Here's a claim. More than 52% of adults. Okay, that's a claim. That says, and that's a percentage, that's a P. P is greater than 0.52. That's the claim, right? It's a P, not a mu, a P, because it's a percentage, a proportion. Greater than 0.52, more, right? More is greater than 0.52. Okay, so state a conclusion. There's a p-value, and without using technical terms, state a final conclusion. Where are we gonna find out what that means? Let's go to the notes. Here it is, number 10, hypothesis test, setup and conclusion. How to write a claim, how to HO and H1, And if the P is low, then the HO must go. Cross out HO, reject the null, strong evidence. If the P is not low, then keep the HO, blah, 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 blah. It tells you all the meanings. So that's the setup and the conclusion to a hypothesis test. So there'll be a question like that on the final exam where I just give you a hypothesis test. I've already got the numbers done. I just want you to tell me about the setup and the conclusion. The steps are right there. Number 10. So this is final exam notes number 10. Final exam notes number 10. All right, number 16. Summa significance level. Use to get information. Original claim. Hypothesis. Okay. Stated conclusion. Without using, oh, this is the same thing. This is notes, final exam notes number 10. Again, notes number 10. Go back here. Hypothesis test, setup, and conclusion. That's how you do it. Follow all those steps, and it'll lead you through it. So I do more of the details on the other YouTube video for the practice final exam. But here I'm just identifying for you where to go to find the steps. Okay, number 17, study of 787. Ran with a blah, 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 490, drop, blah, 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 test the claim. Test the claim that most. So what's the claim? What does most mean? If I said most people's favorite color is blue, what does most mean? More than half, right? So the claim that most of these medical malpractice suits are dropped or dismissed. Most are dropped. That means the percent, these are all P, right? We're talking about the percentage. The percentage is more than 0.5. That's the claim. So this is clearly a hypothesis test on P. Let's go to the notes. So hypothesis test. So this is just setup up here. Number 10 is setup. Number 11 is doing. Well, setup. It's setup and conclusion on number 10 is all it is, and then 11 is actually doing the test with the calculation and everything. So number 10 again is just about the setup and the conclusion. 11 shows you how to actually do the test on your calculator. So hypothesis test using a TI-84 for P or percentage. That's our deal right there. There's the steps. 11A on the final exam notes. So final exam notes 11A is where that information is. Number 18, listed below are lead concentrations. So this is data. This is clearly data now. It's going to be some data test. What are we testing? Claim that the mean is less than 19. So the claim is that the mean, so not a P this time, it's a mu, and you can see all the mu's here, is less than 19. That's the claim. So we're looking at a hypothesis test for mu. Let's go to the notes. Hypothesis test for a mean. Oh, no data given. No, that's not us. We are data given. That's us. So here's what we need. So this is, what was this number? It's 11B part 2. This is 11B part 2 here, not part 1. We have data given. So this is final exam notes 11B part 2. You got to enter the data in L1, t-test, choose data, mu0 is number from H0, list is L1, frequency is 1, choose this, choose whichever matches. There's the steps, 11B, number 2, not number 1, on 11B from the final exam notes, 11B2. So final exam notes, number 11B, part 2 for doing that one because they're giving me data. Okay, so here we are on number 19. Simple random sample, front seat occupants, crashes, car crash obtained among 2765 occupants not wearing seatbelts. 35 were killed. 780, 93 occupants. Blah 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 blah. What's the claim? Test the claim that seatbelts are effective. Effective. What does that mean? Effective. Effective. So, effective. So, this one's a little more tricky. Test the claim that the seatbelts are effective. How are we going to do that? Seatbelts are effective. Well, we're talking about 2765 occupants. 35 were killed. That's a proportion. That's a part of a whole. 35 out of 2765 were killed, and they're no seatbelt. No seatbelt, right? Not wearing seatbelts. And then among 78, 93, so 7, 8, 9, 3, 13 were killed. They had seatbelts on. So those are the two groups. Do you see how it's two groups? It's people not wearing seatbelts and people wearing seatbelts. And that's going to be proportion 1 and proportion 2. Proportion 1 and proportion 2. It even says, yeah, in case you're not sure, it even says right here, look at this, says, consider the first sample to be the sample of occupants not wearing seatbelts. So that's P1, no seatbelt. The second sample to be the sample of occupants wearing seatbelts, P2. So that tells us there's two groups here, two proportions. And so now what does it mean? The claim is what? Seatbelts are effective in reducing fatalities. Claim. Seatbelts effective in reducing fatalities. Reducing, that means P1. Now wait, what's P1? The P1's no seatbelt. P2 is the seatbelt. So if the seatbelt reduces, then it goes which way? Which way does it go? If the seatbelt is effective in reducing, the seatbelt death rate is lower, it goes like that, right? The P2, the seatbelt, is less, is lower. That's the claim being made. For the rest of the steps, we just need to go to the hypothesis test. Now this is two samples. Two samples with P. So two groups, not just one group. Like look at this last problem. Here's number 18. We just talked about one. There was just one mu. There wasn't two groups. There was a lot of data, but it was all pertaining to one group, one sample. There wasn't two separate groups. But now, for the first time, see how are you gonna recognize this on the actual final exam? We're talking about two groups. It says first sample, second sample. So you go, oh, it's a two sample, a two group, and we're talking proportions, so it's a two sample P. Let's go back to our notes. Okay, so here it is. Two proportions for a test or an interval. So remember, this is what, I think this was on exam 3. Yeah, this was on exam 3. So we had one proportion and one mean test. That was back here. This would be, right, this is, just one proportion and t-test just normal, not two groups, and same thing here, t-test just normal. And same thing here, t-test just normal. One group, L1. But now, two proportions. In a minute, two independent means, two dependent means. These are all two now. So you got to identify one of the battles on the finals to identify if there's two samples or one. So we clearly have two proportions here, number 13. It's not two means, is it? It's two proportions, two P's on this problem. So it's 13 on the final exam notes. So it's final exam notes. number 13. Because there's two, clearly, first sample, second sample, and they are P's. Two proportions, and there's the claim. Okay, so here we are on number 20. Large samples of women and men are obtained, hemoglobin levels measured, 95% comes for the difference between two population means. Okay. Difference between two population means. Then they're going to say, what does it suggest? Write a brief statement that interprets. So we need to go to the final exam notes, find something about interpreting a confidence interval for the difference between two means. There it is. Meaning of confidence interval for mu1 minus mu2. That's a difference, isn't it? Subtraction is a difference of two means. It's not two proportions, it's two means. So there it is. Follow those steps. Figure out what that means. It's number 16 on the final exam notes. So, final exam notes. I'm just getting kind of scribbly here. Final exam notes, number 16 for all that stuff. 21, popular theory, presidential, blah, 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 blah. Look at this. See how these are matched up? Two different groups, the president and their main opponent, and they're matched up. That's matched pairs. Remember matched pairs? Let's go back and find it in our final exam notes. Here it is right here. Matched pair. There's the steps. So that's a really specific thing. The data is in matched pairs. Put the data in L1, L2, then L1 minus L2 stored in L3. Do a t-test or t-interval. Choose data, 0. List is L3. That's important. Follow those steps. Number 15 on the final exam notes for matched pair. So that's final exam notes, number 15, because those are in matched pairs. Okay, number 22. Listed below are the numbers of internet users, blah, 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 scatter plot, and then sufficient evidence to support linear correlation claim. Right, down here we have some hypothesis test. It says linear correlation coefficient. Okay, so let's go back to the notes. Um, 17 kind of, but best is, oh yeah, there it is. 18, testing linear correlation. Put data in L1, L2, linear regression t-test, that kind of thing. 18, it's just 18. Yeah, so 18. So 18, linear regression t-test. Testing linear regression. 18 on the final exam notes. 18. So you put the data in L1 and L2. The test is always H0, the R equals 0, and H1, the R does not equal 0. That's always what you do when you're testing for linear correlation. See how you can just follow those steps on the final exam notes and you'll be fine. Just do exactly what those say. Put the data in L1, L2. Your test is telling you what the H0 and the H1 are. Every time they're the same. R equals 0, R does not equal 0. And you can test the linear correlation. Linear regression t-test is what you choose on your calculator. So number 18, final exam notes. So final exam notes, number 18. Number 23, the data below show bug chirps, blah, 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 blah. What's the regression equation? What is the best predicted temperature? Oh, we're predicting things with a linear regression equation. Let's go to the notes. So right here, predicting with a linear regression t-test. There's the steps for predicting with a linear regression t-test. Oh, and you first have to find, where is it? Find the linear correlation. So that would be, you do that under this test. So you're going to actually use this as well. Use both these, 18 and 19, both. 18 and 19, both. So we'll go back. So the final exam notes, you'll use number 18 because you first got to get that, to get the regression equation, and then for that you'll use final exam notes number 19. So first you'll have to get the equation, and then you'll have to use number 19 for the predicted temperature. That's pretty tricky. Make sure you know how to do that. That'll be on the final exam. Number 24, randomly selected birth records were obtained and categorized as listed in the table to the right. Use a 0.01 significance level to test the claim, the reasonable claim that births occur with equal frequency on different days of the week. Equal frequency. Equal frequency. We're testing for equal frequency. Now, how do we test for equal frequency? That's tricky. Let's go back and look at ours. This is kind of a harder one to identify. Let's go back. They're giving us this big old list. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? Let's go back. See the words right here? It's hard to see them. So equal frequency. It's number 20. It's a goodness of fit test. So there's the steps we need to follow. It's hard to see that little phrase, but now that you've seen it on the practice final, you'll know to look for it on the actual final exam. Equal frequency. It's a goodness of fit test. Got to follow those steps. There's nothing else on the final that'll say equal frequency. So if you see anything that says equal frequency, that's a goodness of fit test, number 20 on the final exam notes. So final exam notes number 20. So you're looking for buzzwords like equal frequency. And now why did I grab those? There's a lot of words up there. Well, it says claim. Equal. I always look at what's next to the word claim. Claim that births occur with equal frequency. That's what keyed me in, right? Number 25, a study of seatbelt users and non-users yielded a randomly selected sample data summarized in the accompanied table. Blah, 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 blah. There's one keyword coming. Always look for claim, right? We always look right next to the word claim. That's always where we look for the meaning. Test the claim that, what claim? Here it comes. The amount of smoking is independent. There's your keyword. See how the keywords are, for a hypothesis tester, anyway, are right after test the claim. We're testing the claim for independence, or independent. So let's go back to the final exam notes. So there it is, 21, test for independence. Follow those steps. 21 on the final exam notes. So final exam notes number 21. Okay, and lastly, question 26. Well, they say, blah, 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 data is found, blah, blah. 3 types of vehicles. 3. Let's look for the claim. Claim is always the most important part. Test the claim that, here it comes, the different types of vehicles have the same mean. What different types? 3 different types. The claim is that the 3 are the same. Now 3, what do we do with 3 groups? Do we have 2 group, like P1, P2, or mu1, mu2, but do we have 3 groups? Do we have 3 groups all the same? Yeah, that's the last thing we did. That's the ANOVA. Let's go see the notes. Final exam notes. There it is. Test that 3 or more groups have the same. That'll end up being the ANOVA. Follow those steps. 22 on the final exam notes. So, notes, number 2, especially because you can see at the end of the thing, see there's type A, type B, type C, 3 groups. So again, that clearly means final exam notes number 22. Now, this practice final went in order. I'm trying to do that just to help you out, but so it's not too difficult, and you can find where everything is on the YouTube final exam, the other one, the practice final where I did everything. So this is in order, but the real final exam will be all mixed up, but you can identify which steps to take, which methods to follow using the markers I've given you on this video. You can tell which steps to take if you have the final exam notes with you during the final exam. Use them. You can use as many notes as you want on the final exam. Use that whole packet and whatever else you want to help you on the final exam. Hope this helps. Good luck on that final.